Hey you guys, welcome to the video. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Armand. I'm a Toronto-based deep and progressive house DJ and producer. I'm sharing this video with you as a result of a request from one of you viewers asking how do I arrange or sort of set up my songs in Ableton. So I'm going to take you in on a little tour of one of the songs I finished recently. And this isn't going to be about composition, about how to actually write the song, but kind of how to just get things organized and set up and the way I kind of write my songs, which plugins I'm using, how do I like to arrange the view, the layout, the different channels for the different sounds. All right, so we'll dive into the computer, dive into Ableton, and take a look at this. All right, so here is the track, and the first thing you're going to notice off the bat with this track is that it's organized at the top, and you can see these lines going down. It's organized using these little handy markers that you can add in Ableton. So maybe I can zoom in on these for you, and you'll just see it's to help you keep organized, visually understand your track and how it flows. So your intro section is here, then you have verses, first break, chorus, a bridge. That's where the melody takes a bit of a different route, basically the different part of the song, but the main breakdown of the song, and then the chorus again, and so on and so forth. So these are useful just to visually see how your track is progressing and getting it organized. So this is actually a break beats track, so it's going to sound not with the typical standard 4 to the floor bass kick and beat. So here's the initial intro beat of the song. And then into the verse with the bass line. And then the chorus. So you can hear that one of the main focuses of the song is the lead hook is this kind of progressive delayed synth sound in the blue here. It sounds like this on its own. There's the piano roll for it. And you can hear the sound changing, even though the notes are the same. It's playing the same melody, but the sound is changing, and I'm doing that with automation. So if I press A and go to automation mode here, you can see that I'm adjusting the filter cutoff for this sound so that it doesn't stay too linear. So when it peaks here, you can, let me just zoom in on that for you. When it peaks, you'll hear it get a bit more aggressive in its tone. Okay, so that's the main backing melody of the tune. But in terms of how I've got this arranged, and this is how I always do it, and this I think is a good way for beginners. You know, I'm frankly still a Ableton beginner too. I'm always learning, and I don't think I'm anywhere near where my skills should be to put out, you know, completely professional productions. But, you know, it's a slow process, and I'm getting there bit by bit. But this is how I always like to do it. Kick at the top. The kick is the central driving force of electronic music. So I put that at the top. I always make it white. You can right click here and choose any color that you want, but kick on top. The next row is the other drums. So your highs, I'll just open up this and you can hear it on a solo. Okay, so the rest of the beat. If I add in the bass. Okay, and why do I do this? There's a good reason to separate the drums like this. The reason being is that the kick is a low frequency in the bass register. You may want to process that separately and differently from the rest of your drums, which are typically highs. Okay, after that, and this is maybe a bit controversial, some people like to put their lead synth next, or they like to put their bass line, but I actually just put my effects up here. These two rows are effects, things that happen once in a while. I kind of consider them like percussion. That's the only reason that I like to put them right here under the drums, but that's just a effect that sounds like this. Okay, it kind of complements the breakbeat feel when you hear it all together. Right, so it's kind of part of the beat. And then this one is just a kind of an air blast at the drop. I use little accents like that in most songs. They're a nice way to add some atmosphere and some energy at the drop as well. And then after that, it's my bass line. I have 2 rows of bass, you'll see, and they're into a group so that I can control the sound together. But the reason to have 2 bass lines is just kind of to thicken up the sound a little bit so you can hear this one on its own. Sounds like this. And the second channel on its own has a bit of a different sound to it. The texture is just a little bit different, and the reason for that is I've added a saturator effect down here, and so a bit of bit reduction and a bit of a saturator just to give it some more kind of harmonic overtones, and together you get a bit of a louder, chunkier bass. So with only the first one, hear that. Then if I add the second one on, okay, it's subtle, off, on, oops, both on together, right? So it's subtle, but it adds a little bit of depth and flavor and volume too, a little bit more gain on the bass. Okay, so then I've got another synth over here that comes in at the beginning and again during the breakdown. Kind of just a light floaty accent. Again, adds some interest to the melody. It complements the other synth down here because it's kind of a softer sound than this blue one is. You can hear this blue one, the dark blue one, is a bit harsher sounding. So when I play them together, right, so one's kind of softer, and then the lower one is a bit more edgy. And then you'll see down here, my next main sounds are the pads. Pads mean these kind of long, lingering, atmospheric melodies. And again, I've got two different rows of that in a group. I've grouped them together, just so that this one again has a bit more of an interesting, grittier sound to it. Here it is on its own. Oops, get back here. Okay, so a bit of a sharper, more trebly pitched, or more kind of a sharper sound. And together, they just kind of layer nicely. And under that, this red track here is another synth that's for accent and interest. In the mix, it sounds like this. And then that sound, so what I'm doing with this sound is, you can see here in the breakdown area, or the bridge, again up here, this is the bridge area. This is the main breakdown of the song. So I want to introduce a different melody there, because electronic music is, let's face it, it's pretty repetitive, and you don't want the listener to get too bored, right? So this song, in this song, this red synth here, really takes the lead during the breakdown. So let's hear it. Okay, right, so you see the melody takes a bit of a wander, it kind of strays off of the path of the normal song, does something a little bit more interesting. So I'm introducing that sound earlier during the regular part of the song, during the chorus over here. So you're kind of preparing the listener for that sound early, so that when it does come in and takes more of a prominent role in the song during the bridge, well, that's a song that the listener has already, a sound that the listener has already heard at least. So it's not completely new and completely foreign. Your ears are kind of warmed up for it, right? And that's the last sound in this track. It's a pretty simple track, not that many sounds, not that many instruments. And down here, I've got a kick and bass bus. And what that is one channel where the kick is being sent to and the bass is being sent to. So they converge there. And the reason is I like to, because they're both low-end frequencies, there's a free plugin that's called Bark of Dog. And here it is. And it adds a lot of kind of oomph and depth and boost to your low-end sound. So if we listen to this on solo, oh, the kick is not there because I'm in a breakdown. Let's go here. Okay, so if we turn that off, here's how the kick and bass sound without it. Okay, not as powerful, not as chunky, not enough oomph. And if I put it back on, basically just gives you a nice gain boost in the low frequency range. And that's the song in a nutshell. Other things that I like to use frequently are lots of automation. You'll see here when I go to automation mode, There's lots of different automation during the breakdown on that red synthesizer. Plenty of automation in the pads as well. And also I showed you the main lead synth automation. I showed that earlier. So using automation like that helps you to kind of vary and fluctuate the sounds, again, to kind of change things up, keep it interesting, keep the listener from getting too bored. Otherwise, what else? I like to use some delay and reverb plugins frequently down here on mostly on my synths. I use some delay and reverb on certain drums, like the snare. I would wager I have got something going on. Let's see. Okay, so my snare is actually a clap here. You can see I've got some reverb and delay on that, but not a terribly great deal of it. I'm trying to keep it kind of modest. You can see the dry wet is set to only 5%. You don't want to go too crazy with reverb. And so next thing I'll show you is the mastering chain. And I'm no expert at mastering. It's really hard to master for me. I'm finding it very hard. At least it's a big learning process, steep learning curve. But this is the mastering chain that I've been using lately. And without it, I'll show you how the track sounds. Oh, sorry. Get back here. Master channel. There we go. Okay, so that's without the master chain turned on. I've got it grouped here into one group so that I can just toggle it on and off. So you can see I'm getting a lot more volume gain, or a lot more impact out of it. But whether I'm getting that professional crispness and clarity, that's another matter. That's for you to decide. But I've done this one, the mastering myself on this one, and I'm no professional mastering engineer. But what I've done here basically is I roll off the bass, and that's down here in this EQ. I roll off the bass here from about 100 or 120 hertz onward or downward. I'm making it so that all that bass is in mono, so that you don't get any bad phasing between the speakers on your bass. That's important in nightclubs where a lot of big sound systems are in mono. You don't want to have, you go in and play a track that you've made, it sounded good at home, and then in the club you're getting all kinds of phase cancellation between the two speakers, and your bass just sounds like crap and muddy. Over here I've done a global roll-off of low end that you don't need, stuff that's pretty low, below, where am I there, about 25 hertz, and up here above around 18,000 hertz, I've rolled off the top end, just, high, harsh sounding highs that you don't really need or you can't hear anyway, so it's just extra information to get rid of them. Here I've got a little high shelf boost. You can see it there. Let me play it. If I take that off, go on again. Right, you can just, it's subtle, but you can just hear it kind of helps the highs to shine through the mix a little bit better. Over here I've got some parallel compression, and the parallel channel has a compressor on it, so it just sounds a little bit gritty. Let's hear it alone. Okay, but then when I add in the main channel, take away the parallel compression, you see you lose just a little bit of volume. Okay, and then there's another compressor, a glue compressor, just to tie together things a little bit in the mix. And here's the plugins that I do use, the kind of aftermarket or purchased plugins that I've paid to buy. This one here is called the Oxford Inflator. It's a harmonic inflator. It kind of adds a bit of, the practical effect of it is it sounds like it adds some gain, but it also adds a bit of, harmonic overtones and kind of tonality to the mix. Let's see if we can hear a difference turning it off. Again, it's quite subtle, but when you start adding all these things up together, that's when you can start to notice improvements in your mastering chain. Oh, get back here. So here is the Ozone Ozone Imager. This one is free. It's a free plugin, and what I'm doing with this is making sure that the highs are spread out enough in the stereo channel to give the highs some because remember I've already rolled off the low end and made it mono over here. So over here I'm just making sure that the mix is in the stereo field spread out nicely enough, left to right. That shows you a left to right visual representation of the mastering, or sorry, of the in total tracks stereo field or stereo image. And then I've got the Fab Filter limiter Pro L2. This basically is a tool that you use to get some gain, some added volume in your mix. You can see the parts in red here, the red valleys are what's being limited. And then I've got another free plugin you can use just to measure your loudness. Great tool, the Julian loudness meter. You want to watch the integrated LUFs. LUF stands for loudness units. What was the last part of that? Loudness units full scale, I think. Basically, the integrated LUFs is kind of the average output or average gain during the song for a period of time. So that's why it's changing in real time. But you can see it's averaging out to around -8 LUFs, which is, you know, loud enough, but it doesn't. Still, this doesn't quite pop as loud as professional tracks, and you know, I assume I'm doing something wrong or there's a plugin I'm missing. If you got any tips for me, please comment in the subject line or in the comments below and let me know if you have any suggested improvements for how I can get some added clarity and pop and volume out of this song. But so far, that's kind of where my mastering skills allow me to get to. Not perfect. Maybe good enough to play out in a nightclub. I don't know. All the nightclubs are closed because of COVID. So I'm just working away in my studio trying to improve my skills as best I can. I'll just show you the mixing strip too. Nothing too fancy going on here. The drums, of course, are still folded in to one instrument, so you have to expand them. There's all the other drums. And I haven't used the reverb and the delay send strips in this track. I know it's good to work with those. I probably should start incorporating that into my production, but I haven't done so yet. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. That's basically how I'm arranging all of my songs at this time and what I'm up to in terms of mastering and plugins. Okay, guys, I hope that's been helpful for you. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Cheers.